good recruiter, what we do is it's not, we don't just go headhunting. Now, yeah, that is part of what we do, but a good recruiter understands their business to the point where they can be at the table and have almost a consultative approach to be able to discuss what staffing models look like and correlate staffing models to their P&L.
Today's episode is brought to you by, well, us, the team here at Pintcast Media. If you've ever thought about launching a podcast to grow your brand, your clinic, your business, or just to share ideas, my team can help. This way you record, we do the rest. For today's episode, every PT clinic owner has faced the moment, too many evals, not enough staff, and zero time to even think about hiring, let alone actually going out and doing it. Our next guest has lived on both sides of the recruiting game, and now he's teaching PTs how to stop scrambling and start scaling. Whether you want to build an internal hiring system or outsource the whole thing to pros who know your world, he has the roadmap. He's a founder, a CEO, and a creator of one of the biggest LinkedIn groups in rehab and performance. Welcome to the show, Christian Claudio. And then we'll start this thing. Let's do it. All right, Christian, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for taking some time out to speak with us.
Honored to be here, Jimmy.
If someone's looking for a job, it never matters until you're looking for a job. And when you're looking for one, it's like water in the desert. Someone like Christian is like, you're like the guy with a lake behind him, right? Like you're like, how do I find it? Like, help me. What are the things I need to do, right? Or on the other side, if you're someone who needs to hire, I imagine you never get someone who's like, I need to hire someone 6 months from now. You're like, I needed to hire 6 weeks ago.
Yesterday. Yeah.
So I imagine everybody that talks to you is like, they're in a rush, man. Like they need what you know, and they needed it 6 weeks ago. Help me. So I'm glad to have you here because you're the guy with the answers. So no pressure. All right.
That's right.
All right. So let me ask a question like this. Why is hiring the real growth limiter for most physical therapy or healthcare? We'll just go wider with healthcare clinic owners. And why don't they see it that way?
Because they always think of hiring as an afterthought. It's really ultimately how much can I leverage my current staff in order for us to match patient care or growing volumes and maximize, whatever the KPI is for that particular clinic, whether it be your patients per day, patients per hour, however they measure it. And then leveraging that on a per clinician basis. But what I've found that a lot of not just therapists, like you mentioned, like across the spectrum of specialties, and true staffing models and what's called gearing ratios haven't been determined yet. They know what productivity looks like on a per clinician basis, but they haven't really looked at the holistic approach of what productivity looks like in a growing clinic as they grow not just a particular clinic, but as they grow their, let's say, if they're adding additional clinics and going regional. And so part of a good recruiter, what we do is it's not, we don't just go headhunting. Now, yeah, that is part of what we do, but a good recruiter understands their business to the point where they can be at the table and have almost a consultative approach to be able to discuss what staffing models look like and correlate staffing models to their P&L. It's as simple as that. And so, one thing that a lot of my good clients, because I've got fantastic clients, Jimmy. I mean, I've got some really sharp PT owners that they get it. They just get it, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they enjoy paying additional third party search firm fees.
Sure.
No one does. But what they do is they understand that they've pre-negotiated a, a, a relationship that is absorbed by the additional cash or additional revenue that they're able to receive from this particular hire. And to answer your question specifically, fully understanding what a new therapist represents in the form of revenue for the clinic. and then factor in those costs of not just cost to hire, which is where everyone focuses on, but really the cost of inaction, not having that therapist, and then the time frame. So I have one particular client that he is probably one of the best marketers and recruiters. He's just as good as I am, frankly, as a recruiter.
Wow.
And he's a he owns three clinics. I mean, it's not a big empire, and he did that purposely. He likes quality of life as well. He's the late guy, but man, he's sharp, and he can recruit and market like the best of them. But he utilizes me because of acceleration of time, and
Sure.
I can finish the sentences. And so, because we had that level of relationship, the only call when he calls me, I know what he's already done, and then what I have to come in and this essentially he's giving me softballs to continue his success. That's the type of relationship I'm looking for, and that's really the type of client that really understands their business. And so, yeah, someone that can plan ahead and can allocate those costs into the additional cash flow that they're going to
Yeah.
be.
Let me ask, you don't have to say who it is, but let's go back to that guy. Like, if you were to break down his DNA, what makes him so good? What makes him so nowhere in PT school or any of the prerequisite classes that we took, this wasn't in there. What are the elements that make someone good at recruiting, which is such a skill set, but if you don't have it, man, it can really limit your growth.
Yeah, his number. So it's a one-two punch. Patient care is. I mean, you're going to hear this every every clinician is going to say patient care is number one, right? And I believe it. I truly believe it. But this particular guy has correlated patient care with his business, and the caveat is how well he treats his clinician. So so uh, uh, so because of that, what he says is what he does, and so he's a man of integrity. So when he stands before someone and he's able to give a commitment, he's able to communicate culture, he's able to communicate patient care to the level, and he has a model conducive to that. So it's not like he's telling you he's for free patient care and he's expecting your to see 18 patients a day. That's counterintuitive, but he has a model that works, um, and he's able to communicate that very well. Plus, he's not afraid to pick up the phone. I mean, that's 9% of it is actually carving out the time to pick up the phone, and that's what he does. And also, he's not afraid to for about what I call co-opetition. You ever heard of that?
No, tell me about it.
Yeah, co-opetition is understanding who your competitors are and cooperating with them in the form of resources or sharing knowledge. He's a fantastic networker. He can go into any one of his competition clinics. They don't feel threatened. He doesn't feel threatened when they come over to it, and he has very good relationships, and so that reputation goes far. So like, um, and then of course he values the new grad, but I mean every PT owner values new grads, but it goes one step further because the uh, the new grads when they may not come on board with him, but they may do a rotation through his clinics and then they'll remember. And so as a mentor, as they go back, anyone that brings up his name will say, yes, if you're going to be in these, if you're going to geographically live within these, these little towns or cities, you're going
That's
to want to work there.
that's great.
Uh,
It sounds like understanding what you are and who you are, understanding what the other people might value and what they're looking for, clearly communicating that to that person ad nauseum over and over and over again. And then
yeah.
the extra bonus thing, what was it again? What was the term?
Competition.
Co-opetition.
Yeah.
It,
So,
it sounds very like Abraham Lincoln-y, right? Like make your what people would normally think your enemies your friends, and then you have
right.
no enemies, right? And then it's like, hey, listen, this person isn't a good fit for my clinic, but I'll send them your way. That doesn't really hurt you, right? Like if that person wasn't going to be a good fit, but would, what is the harm of co-opetitioning with that person?
Absolutely. I mean, he is. um, he is a low volume guy, um, manual therapy type practice, and he focuses on OCS, SES, and CS fellowships for his clinicians. He wants everyone to have that next tier of specialization. So if you get a high volume therapist in there, they're not going to really like it, and so he can refer out those therapists out. And then when those therapists are ready to maybe move into more of that type of environment, then he's always there for them. So
Yeah,
yeah, and I've got that type of owner all throughout the United States,
that's
and I've got
good.
the other owner too.
Who's that? Now describe the other side of the coin.
The other side of the coin is so we're talking about essentially we're talking about perfect clients versus challenging clients, and so the other side of the coin and the ones that are hardest to recruit for are owners that are not, they treat me like they would treat the clinician, so they're not very responsive. They don't provide feedback. um, when I'm searching for leadership or searching for more nuance of how to fine tune the search, they're just not as available as the first type of owner. Uh, and they any type of client that relegates me to a vendor is the toughest type of client to work, because
Yeah.
that's not my style. I can be a vendor for anyone, but I choose not to. So yeah, I've got a few of those too.
Are you still stuck spending hours on administrative tasks? Empower EMR automates scheduling, billing, and documentation so you can actually focus on your patients, not your paperwork. Book a free demo now at empoweremr.com. Well, there's lessons in
So
that, right? Which is if you're going to work with someone like Christian, that person needs you. I was taught early on in my radio background, which is when you become the program director, which is the guy who runs the radio station. It's like clinic director, similar level, right? And you now work for everybody, quote, below you. And it seems counterintuitive because when you're the minion, right? When you're the guy, when I was working my
right,
way up in radio, I couldn't wait to be the boss to tell everybody what to do. And then I worked for some really great bosses and some really not so great bosses. And I realized the great ones actually worked for me. If I had a problem, they were like, well, let's go down the hallway and fix this and let's get it done.
right,
And the other ones would just say, figure it out. It's what I pay you for. But I'm coming to you with a problem, some potential solutions. I'm trying to be proactive. So working with or for people, there's a difference. I liked people that I worked with, but if I worked for people, that's when stuff got really difficult. Let me change the topic. What is a strong internal? Well, first of all, what is an internal recruiting system? I don't know I mean, I'm talking
yeah.
with someone like you. I might think I know what it is. What is an internal recruiting system? And then what does a good one look like in an organization?
So I'm gonna ask you a question for clarification. Are you referring to recruiting processes, or are you referring to an actual applicant tracking system, or all the above?
Let's do all the above because I got you here. You're the guy.
Okay, sure, sure. So you starting with the actual technology, just having the technology that can easily post your positions and then be able to track your candidates, having a very clear, concise pipeline, and then a system that will allow you that will remind you to do everything from uh, contact points with the candidates after each stage, depending how large of a practice that you're recruiting for. Um, and then the most important thing is the system that really helps you keep up with after the hire. So the onboarding stage, and then 30, 60, and what I call a 30, 60, 90. So got to be able to touch base with your new hires at 30, 60, and 90. And it's got to be a formal process, assuming you're talking with them every day, but just specifically talking about the recruiter, not the owner, but the recruiter following up with, having that follow up with your clinician is huge. And then that way you can avoid any kind of misunderstandings or weird exits. I've heard them all. Um, and then that kind of tailors into the actual process itself, having a very easy, non-complicated, if you're a clinic owner, two-stage process, a two interview process max. If
Thank
you're a
you.
larger,
Thank you for saying that, because there's some people who are, I've
yeah.
heard some horror stories.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's bad out there where you're making this poor candidate go through, and never mind the shortage,
Sure.
and then they're going to go to the place that makes them feel comfortable. It's that hard to get on board. Then how hard is it to actually do their job? And
Sure.
so, two-step process, unless you're a larger organization, maybe three steps max. And then having it, having what you say in the interview process got to correlate, to the onboarding. You say that this is a organization that prides itself in culture. It's got to be conducive to that.
Show it.
So
Yeah.
um, and a lot of first impressions are what we call the white glove treatment. Are you giving the white glove treatment to the candidate, not just through the interview process, but the onboarding process? And that's huge. Making it as painless as possible. Um, you know, the from the from the first day to the EMR training to if they're going into some sort of specialization, um, and then and then you know again partnering with your internal recruiting team in order to make sure that they're doing that. And if you don't have an internal recruiting team, finding a third party recruiter like myself, or more and more what I'm seeing and what we're considering doing is doing more fractional type recruiting services where you may not fully hire me on board, but I could act as if I'm one of your recruiters. And so
Understood.
yeah,
Those are the
yeah,
tools. You've said before, it's like one of your hot takes, right? Which is a lot of clinics sabotage their own hiring. One of those things would be having so many layers in the hiring process that it actually gets rid of the good people, right?
that's
So
right.
what are these things that they can do that they are doing that they're sabotaging their own hiring, and how can they fix those things?
Yeah, no feedback. Well, feedback. So no feedback on each stage, either to the recruiter or even to the candidate. I even candidates that apply directly, and I would call them and say, "Hey, what do you think about XYZ clinic?" It's like I already applied there. I'm like, "Oh, interesting. Well, when did you apply there?" 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard back. And I'm like, "What?" And so, and then when I would reach out back to my client, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, this candidate in our process right now," and I'm like, "Well, no, the candidate doesn't think they're in process because they lack the feedback. They think that maybe 3, 4, or 5 days can go by, and at that point, they're sabotaging those candidates. And there's positions are a dime a dozen right now. It's a candidate-driven market, and so you're going to lose those type of candidates, or they're going to lose interest.
Self-sabotaging. But I mean, I feel
Self-coaching.
like a lot of things that you're saying are obvious when you're saying them. I feel like even if someone wasn't going to partner with someone like you, which they probably should, saying some of these things out loud, would you want to be going through your own onboarding process? Would you want to go through your own resume submission process? I saw recently, and can't for the life of me remember who it was, but a CEO at a large organization recently tried to get hired at his own company. Obviously, he changed his name and his resume a little bit, but
Sure.
not a lot. Like, he was an overqualified or a regularly qualified candidate for the job. And he's like, the process sucked. I never even got an interview. Something's broken here. So sometimes it's the process. Sometimes it's not just bitching at the market or yelling at the clouds. Sometimes you're the problem, as Taylor Swift has been saying. Hi, it's me. I'm the
Yeah,
problem.
right.
It's me.
Absolutely right, Jimmy. I mean, um, it's interesting. I mean, that would be a really good exercise I like to see is a lot of the clients that go through the process, and I think a lot of the good ones really have a beat on it, has an understanding of okay, well, this kind of blows. Maybe we should tweak this, or
Change it
or have
up.
a 24-hour policy where we're giving feedback right away to candidates and setting the expectations, painting the picture, painting the vision. I mean, that's another sabotage I see quite a bit is I'm painting more the vision for my clients than my actual client or the actual owner is painting when they meet with the
Oh,
candidate. So because, and this is number two sabotage, is the interview itself. So a lot of my clients that listen, they're good, but the some that they want to do their own interview process the way they've always done it. I've asked a candidate, hey, how was the interview? And they're like, well, I learned a lot about the clinic. I learned a lot about, the what the needs are, but I didn't see myself as part of it. And I'm like,
Huh.
well, why? Yeah, and well, the owner never asked about me, what my goals are, where I'm wanting to go, and it was always just what I can do for the clinic.
Right.
And a lot of times when I see the problem with recruiters too, is they'll call not so good recruiter. There's a misnomer that all recruiters that make phone calls are good recruiters, and that's not
Sure.
necessarily the case. How they actually make the phone call too. In my 20, almost 20 years of recruiting and recruiting leadership, one of the things that I've had to train like not so good recruiters is that initial call, and also how they screen, and then clients how they actually do conduct the interview. And it's something like this: if you begin the call with, "I have this need, I have this, I have that," and you provide the laundry list, right? I call it the old or the bad watch salesman, where you got a watch salesman and you open up the trench coat and all the watches are want to buy a watch. It's awful because it's all about me, right?
Right.
It's not about the candidate, and and candidates feel that they have an issue with that, and so those recruiters and also the clients that say, well, let me find out more about Jimmy. Let me find out more what what you're looking for, and then I can provide what our clinic is about, and then you can see if this is a fit in the next stage in your career. Just that little switch, it makes a world of difference. It just means that you really truly care, or it projects that you care.
Yeah.
um, on the flip side, you may care. You may go to every birthday party, or you may go to every wedding or funeral of your employees, and you truly care. But first impression is everything. And so if you start with your laundry list of needs and not really seeking to understand what the clinician needs or the candidate needs in that matter, then you're going to send the wrong impression.
Sure. Anything
So
else?
yeah,
And,
sabotage
and
number two. Yeah.
yeah. Is there a third major sabotage you see, or
Yeah, if a clinical owner is going to do their own recruiting, they don't. A lot of times they're doing what we call posting and praying. So they post a position, they use all the job boards, and they just hope and pray that they're going to get a candidate, and then they'll hire a recruiter. They don't ask the recruiter, okay, what is your process? They'll just say, okay, well, you're the cheapest recruiter, and so
I'm going to go with you?
gonna send you, and then the recruiter does the same thing, posted praise, and so that's the biggest sabotage I would find in actual recruiting and sourcing. So I do what's called, and I teach and I promote what I call a push pull approach. So a push approach is a lot of the market doesn't do, and that's kind of what the old school recruiter used to do. Is they would just pick up the phone, like I mentioned earlier, pick up the phone, tap someone on the shoulder, and don't approach them like a used car salesman or a watch salesman, but ask them, be consultative. So one of the things that I've taught my recruiters in the past and I like to do is I just imagine if I have a candidate on the phone, I imagine that there's a table between us. And I purposely, in my mind, get up from the table and come alongside them. So how I speak to them is how I would speak to them if I was in the same room alongside them, presenting to them an opportunity as a more of a consultative approach, as opposed to a sales approach. Not that sales is wrong. Sales is fantastic, and is definitely needed in our industry, but it's not us versus them either.
Sure.
It's having a consultative approach and then knowing, not being afraid of no. So a candidate, it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit, especially, in this day and age. I see a lot of recruiters try to, cram what a square peg in a round hole, right?
Sure.
You can't do that. Not with people's lives, and having the understanding that this is about people's lives, and you have influence in someone's life for the next 2 to 10 years. I placed this one particular candidate, relocated her Iowa to the mountains, the White Mountains of Arizona, and it was a big move for her. And I we went through it. We did the pros and cons. The healthcare system at the time, a fantastic system, great client, great facility director, and when went there, fell in love with the area, and then 15 years later, she's still there. I still get a call. She calls me periodically, thanking me, and so that's a huge responsibility, and I take that seriously. So if you're hiring a recruiter, making sure that they address those three things, and really, ask them about the recruiting process. What, where are you posting? Okay, that's fine. Now, how are you doing the other side of it? You're pushing now. How are you pulling candidates in? And and then that's a holistic approach on how to do it. So not just posting and praying. That's important too. You got to get your name out there, but getting a geographical list of the candidates in a 20-mile radius, 30-mile radius of the clinic, and just tapping them on the shoulder and finding out where they're at in their career. And then if it's not for them, then asking who do they know.
Yeah.
So just blocking and tackling. And some of my clinic owners, they do that well. So then when I get the call, I'm like, oh, okay, I know they did all that stuff.
It's the harder
So
one.
so then we do some extra stuff that we do
How do
that
you
I guess
know
makes it
when
work.
that tipping point is? You mentioned that you've got some people that you work with who do the basics really well. So where's that tipping point if you are sitting next to an owner on the same side of the table when it's clinic hire in-house or partner with someone like you at StaffMed? What's that in case of fire break glass moment?
Yeah, that well, it boils down to this, and a perfect owner, perfect client, they do everything, and then they still need my services. It's only because of one thing and one thing only. They do not, because they're friends with their buddies. They don't want to call into those clinics and poach. And so sometimes, they'll when I sit down with them, I'm like, okay, you have a choice. You can tell me what to do, what you don't do. Tell me the tell me the clinics that are off limits. What are the competitors that are off limits? And really, that's their number one limitation is either calling a clinic owner that's a friend that they feel awkward doing that, or even someone that they're not really close with, that they're competitors and they haven't gone into each other, but they don't want to be perceived as poaching. Sometimes having that third party being able to come, especially my approach, which is not a hard sell type of approach. I just come alongside of them as a colleague and say, hey, have you considered? Are you completely happy? Or the question I love asking um, is, if you had a magic wand, what would you change in your current workplace, your current role? And then the follow up question is, do you see that actually happening? And so then they'll tell me, well, yeah, you know what, I haven't really considered the change, but tell me more about your client. And then if word got out, it was my company's name that called them. It wasn't the
Sure.
PT clinic down the street that called them. And so usually that's why a high level client that understand these things, they would reach out to me because of that. And then the other thing is the client I was mentioning when we first started our meeting, our talk, there's only 12 hours in the day that he likes, man. So he recognizes that if he can just duplicate himself, then
Sure.
he's able to do more in the market. And
Sure.
so sometimes that's just they have no problems doing any of the steps. They just need someone they want to duplicate themselves. And then hiring someone like me is a lot cheaper than hiring a full-time person
Sure.
internal. So does that help? Those are the two reasons why they would end up going with me.
Are you still staying late just to finish your notes? Aphelis Scribe uses ambient AI to auto-generate documentation, so your notes are done before you leave the room. You want to see how it works? Email me now at jimmy@ptpintcast.com. I'll give you a quick demo. Yeah. Well,
So
a lot of times we mentioned this before too, is hiring often happens in panic mode, right? They should have hired, hey, I need you to get this
yeah.
done 6 weeks ago. How do you suggest you turn hiring into a proactive growth engine? Is it always be on the lookout? Is it have a bench or a bullpen to pull from? Well, how do you flip that from panic to proactive?
Well, I mentioned it before. Those are great suggestions. That all is so. Those are all components to one main thing. That's really understanding staffing model. It really boils down to where do you see the clinic going? What is your what is your what's the square footage? What is the capacity that you can reach in the clinic, and how many truly how many clinicians are coming in? And then looking at where your tenured staff is, like, is there, are there any risks that the staff may exit it, leave, maybe be on some sort of leave that you need coverage, and then having that bench to be able to anticipate those unforeseen losses of staff. But then always be recruiting. I One of the most successful, like I said, successful clients. He does his rotations at all the schools. He is active in mentoring. He'll do workshops at the clinic, and that's been huge. Bringing in more of the community, and he'll pull from hours away to be able to pull other therapists and clinicians in. He's not just having your rotations with students, but following up with those students all constantly. Um, and then I've even seen him work with techs and have the techs come back, go to school, come back, and then come on board after school, or encouraging the techs to get their PTA license, going progress, you know. So that's been a best practice that I've seen him to do
Yeah.
too, but
You've
really
built.
staffing model for planning.
Sure. It sounds like you're highlighting like he understands what game he's in. He's playing the game of creating a place people will want to work and then communicating that. Like all of these things that you're highlighting about these examples are simple. Not doesn't mean they're easy to do, but they're simple to map them out, right? Would you want to go through this process? Is this a place that you'd want to
Right.
work? Have you communicated that? Making sure you're doing the basics well. Another basics well is growing a community. You've built a 170,000 person plus LinkedIn community. I want you to talk about that. How'd you do it? And then my question is, how do you think personal branding and recruiting really intersect in today's hiring landscape? Because hiring is happening here on these things in places like
Yeah,
LinkedIn and things like that.
that's right. That's right. Well, yeah, they all actually just started when I got into to recruiting back in '06. I One of the first best practices was to set up a group, and so my hope was I'm going to have a group of maybe 400 or 500 of candidates and maybe some. So I set up the sports performance physical therapy group in LinkedIn. My goodness, I never thought in a million years it would be the largest sports therapy group on LinkedIn. Yeah, 173,000. I remember when we just crossed the 100,000 mark. We're getting close to 200,000. It's an international group. One of the main things that I've done is got out of the way. Like like this immediately, when I first started the group was all about um, recruiting. And again, I was new, so it was all about me, what I could, get from it. And it wasn't growing. And so the moment that I was like, okay, it's not about me, it's about the community, and I'm just a student of the community. And then I went and recruited some of the top therapy leaders in the country, and then actually international now, and as admins. And so they gladly became admins, and I don't charge anything for that. They can come in and then they can self promote all their products and then as their admins, and now they're promoting. And so I basically did economy of scale. Got some of the top leaders in the world, in the therapy world, and literally internationally. And I'm gonna be able to come in, and they've been growing it. So I've been sitting back, and then I didn't limit to me as the only recruiter. because I don't have every job in the world, but
Sure.
I wanted the candidate base, I wanted the clinical base to be able to have access to as many jobs as possible. So I opened it up to all recruiters. So it's been it's been a labor of love for sure. And I'm looking at it right now, and I've got about 244 pending posts and 1,800 more requesting to join. So I've got to
Wow.
get to work.
If you build it, they will come.
Oh my goodness, no doubt, Jimmy.
But I feel like it's resonates again. I give this example too. Freshman and sophomore year in college, I got a lot of first dates, but not a whole lot of second dates, and I couldn't understand why, Christian. Because on the first date, I couldn't help but tell the girl how smart I was and how popular and how I was
Right,
an athlete.
Billy.
And then you know what? No
Yep.
second date. And people laugh at that, of course, in that model. And then you say, well, junior and senior year, I just figured when I went on a date, I would just ask questions about the other person. And oh my gosh, that worked well. We laugh at that. And that's funny. But then
Right.
people laugh at me on stage and then go do it about their business and realize why no one wants to get closer. And I say,
Yeah.
listen, you can laugh at me all you want, but then you got to look in the mirror and say, am I doing this with my business? It sounds like with that group, in the beginning, you built it about you and how you could leverage it. And the moment you switched that to how do I help other
Uh,
people, it took care of
it took off.
itself. It blew up.
Oh my goodness, it sure did. Yeah, I don't ever promote it. I mean, I literally like it has taken off, and the content is amazing. I'm learning so much from the group. I've learned so much from the administrators, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it for
Hot
sure.
take. You say hiring is the single most controllable factor in clinic growth. Explain that to me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you don't have, and this goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about, if you don't have a plan, so what do they say? If you don't plan, you plan to fail, or so what,
Failure.
Jimmy, help me out with that.
Coach John Wooden said failure to plan is
Yeah,
planning to
yeah.
fail.
There you go. And 100%. You said it best. And a lot of clinical owners, they are not planning on growth, and they're burning out their clinicians. Jimmy, one of the biggest things that I'm finding it, and it's sad. I've got a passion for it. I do multiple specialties. Our staffing firm, our recruiting firm, not just is in the therapy space, it's in the physician space too, but I love physical therapy, and specifically I love private practice. And so it is sad for me to hear two things. One, when I talk to a therapist and they chose to do something else, and that's sad for me. I Why? Because I was an athlete, and I also had double hip replacements. And because of a physical therapist, I'm able to have a good natural gait. I'm able to work out again. Like I see the value of the industry. And then you have mentioned it on previous podcasts about, and here's number two. And what's sad is how much money it takes for student loans. And then that correlates with the compensation hasn't really moved too much in therapy. I know I'm hitting a few nerves there and across the spectrum,
Sure.
but it's sad. I mean, I feel like there needs to be a change overall in therapy, and I don't remember the question fully. I'm stumbling in on something that I'm pretty passionate about. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Hiring being the single most controllable factor
right.
in clinic growth.
Yeah, yeah, and because and thank you. Going back to the every 10 therapists I talk to, at least one or two of them are getting out of the industry. Or I've had three clients lately. They're like, I'm done. I can't continue this, and then they're selling off to some of the bigger boxes. And so the one thing that's been most successful for those, I'm going back to the plan, is making sure that they have a growth plan that's conducive to their footprint. And then also, and this comes more of the entrepreneurial side. I have this one particular client who she's busting out at the seams. She's got two clinics. She really should be at 10. She's got an amazing referral network. She's turning her turnaway rate is quite high, and she just doesn't want to pull the trigger on getting
Mm.
either a larger space or additional clinic. Plus, she's highly sought after, so she can certainly hire, and I can certainly get her filled in her clinics too. So I'm talking to her all the time. Hey, you need to expand, you need to expand, you need to
Psychology.
expand. Yeah, yeah. They don't want to take the chance because, again, kind of the factors that we had talked about before. So if you don't have a bottom line, Jimmy, if you don't have an understanding of your staffing model and how it correlates to your floor plan and your volumes, and you're not anticipating the growth that could come, and have solid marketing skills, then if you can have all that, but if you don't have a growth model for utilizing recruiting, then you're going to be stuck. You know.
Christian, are you ready to play a game with us? We call it game time.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
All right, we're going to call this game Right People, Right Seats. I'll give
Okay,
you a hiring scenario and you tell me how to think through it like a recruiter. All right?
okay,
All right.
sure, you got it.
All right, here's a scenario. You need a staff PT in 30 days. What's the very first thing that you would do, Christian?
Very first thing to do is you reach out to former employees,
Why is that so successful?
because you know each other and things change. Employees that are rehireable and they left for whatever reason. I had a scenario that it was the exact scenario in Atlanta, Georgia. There was one particular owner. She had opened 3 years ago, and one of her first hires was a really good friend of hers, and they had a falling out because at the time it was a cash based practice, and this is like they're just hand to fist, time or hand to mouth type of scenario. Well, fast forward now she's a full fledged practice. She's got plenty of volume, but she just never wanted to make the call because she felt like there was something like in between them.
Make
So
that
I
call.
encouraged her to just give her a call, and they were able to make amends, bring a relationship back together again, and now they're buddies again. And she's working there 2 days a week, and
That's
so
great.
yeah. So it's unfortunately it took me to do it, but if she would have just picked up the phone, that was her friend. Yeah, you never know.
When you see a job post online, here's scenario two. One red flag you see in more than 90% of job posts. What's a red flag?
Uh, no perks and benefits at the very top.
Yeah, make sure
Yeah,
you sell the
major red
benefits,
flag.
right? I see a lot of laundry
Okay.
lists. Hey,
Yeah,
we're hiring. Okay, great. That's about you. And we
it's
need
all about
this.
you.
And this is
Yeah,
about us. And this is where we're located. This is the type of patient. Hey man, if I can't see myself in your story, I'm not gonna get any closer to that.
it really bottom line, Jimmy. That's it. So like when I see those postings, I get excited as a recruiter
Sure, sure,
because I
sure.
know
People
I
are not
can
gonna
make
work.
them.
Right.
It's right.
Third scenario, new grad or seasoned physical therapist. Which do most clinics overestimate or underestimate?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, but I got a little. My answer is not quite on that point. So let me give it a shot.
Go ahead.
New grad underestimate, and also seasoned underestimate.
Okay. Help me understand.
I can explain
Hit me.
why. New grad underestimate because of the obvious. You underestimate, there's a lot of times, I mean, sometimes the new grads have like previous experience that, they've been managers of, XYZ and other industries, and they're
Yep.
coming in, they're sharp, super sharp. So you kind of sell them short a little bit. Overestimate or underestimate the seasoned. Man, so many, even some of my best clients they don't necessarily want to hire a 25 plus year therapist because they feel like, all right, well, they're already set in their ways, they have bad
Right.
habits already, or they're going to undermine my authority. I've had that as an issue. And I'm like, yeah, just give it a shot. Just bring them in, have them shadow, see how they
Yeah.
do. Have them just shadow you and introduce them to patients. See if they cut you off. See if how they respond, and then a lot of times they value that level. A lot of times their own fear is their worst enemy. So really, it's not that at all. Is that seasoned person can come in and really add some value, and one thing that I preach to everyone I come in contact with is edification costs zero. It costs you zero to edify. So if you have a culture of edification amongst each other, it's only going to increase the value of that organization and that culture. And so work to edify the seasoned and the seasoned therapist, and they'll edify you back. It's reciprocate.
Last one. Most underrated place to find great candidates today in 2025.
I would have to say it's not really a place, but it's a type of candidate, a passive candidate,
Okay. What do you mean by that?
someone that's not looking. That is the most underrated place because you don't want. So everyone likes the active candidate because they're easy because they come to you, but those are the ones that are you're going to think you're hiring them. Like a new grad is or an active candidate,
Right.
too, and it's that passive candidate. Get the one the pelvic floor therapist at your competitor who's built the program that you never think will leave, that you can tap them on the shoulder, you commend them for what they did, and paint a picture of how you would want pelvic floor in your clinic.
What it could look like. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
and you never know that passive candidate is just waiting for a call like that.
Unless you pick up the phone and actually make that
Unless you
call.
pick, yeah, you'll never know.
Christian, last thing we do on the show is called the parting shot. It's your chance for like a mic drop moment, soapbox statement. What's the last thing you want to leave with the audience as we wrap up?
Not everyone needs a recruiter. Not everyone needs to utilize the resources. But I would strongly encourage you to take a look under the hood of your hiring process. Don't let it be an afterthought. Make it part of your growth plan at the beginning of the year. As you sit down, you create a vision for the clinic or your practice, and see where you could possibly be and where you would like to be at the end of the year.
Yeah, love it. Christian, thanks for the time. I think this type of insight, most people will overlook it and say, well, why do I need to talk to someone like Christian? It's like, I don't know. He looks at the things and the problems and the people who are solving them well and not well and can see things that others can't. So thanks for doing this, man. Appreciate it.
Man, it's a pleasure, Jimmy, and I appreciate you and your platform. Thank you so much for having me on.
Like what you heard? Great. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify. You can watch the episodes on YouTube. Or don't. I'm not your boss. You want to specialize in ortho, neuro, or sports physical therapy and actually get paid while doing it? Brooks IHL offers accredited residencies and fellowships with full salary, full benefits, and real mentorship from clinical experts. Learn more and apply at brooksihl.org. There aren't nearly enough podcasts in this world. Said no one. Why not launch one more? If you thought about launching a show but don't quite know how, we can help you do all that back-end stuff. Email me at jimmy@ptpintcast.com and we can add one more podcast no one else will listen to the pile.